In studio with the Admiral, Bill Stubblefield. William.
Rob, good morning. Enjoy it. That's it.
No, wasn't sure.
Been in a pause mode with the Admiral here.
Kind of paused mid-word on that one.
Amen.
Kind
I
of
thought he was
cut
going to
us.
tell us what he was enjoying. I wasn't sure.
Also, Maria Lawrenson.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Wonderful to have you. And in the next segment, by the way, we'll have County Commissioner John Hardy, Gary Wine, the county administrator, and these data center bills, which Eddie Guckenauer yesterday in Charleston with Gary Wine spoke because there is a situation with tax dollars that the county wouldn't get with some of these microgrids, and we'll get into that in the next half hour. In this segment of the program, we introduce Dr. Ryan Saxe, Superintendent of Schools. Good to have you back here, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you, Rob. It's good.
I like to keep you around because
I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
I like to keep you
Way
around
to go,
because
Ryan.
you keep a check on Bill.
It's good to be here.
You keep Bill honest.
That's right.
You're the only one with the authority to keep him in check.
Is that right?
Yeah. The reason I hesitated is when Dr. Saxe came in, we were talking about the status of various bills.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do some quick research
Yes.
to see what the status was. And you caught me in midstream, Rob. I can only do one thing at one time. And I was doing my research, and I was not prepared to say, good morning, Rob.
Well, and going forward, let me know when you don't want introduced, and I won't introduce you.
He could come to Maria first.
That's right.
And I'd just be right in there.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get right into it then with the legislature and this bill that the state is considering, which the county commission does not appear to be in favor of because of the way the tax dollars are treated, and how that eventually flows down to a school. Do you have any clarification on school funding and how that would work?
I don't. What I know about the concern, what I have concerns with the bill is that it doesn't leave tax dollars with the community in which the data center is sitting, and that affects the county commission's ability to allocate resources for fire, EMS, police, and so I think as we think about that, that would be a concern that I have as a leader of one of the largest local organizations we have, which is our public school system, and how much we depend upon those resources as well. So that would be the greatest concern I have, that hopefully they can flesh out. I think that anytime we can have growth toward technology and increasing our footprint here in the Eastern United States is important, and I know that that's what these data centers are trying to accomplish, but we need to make sure we're supporting the work of where these data centers are going to be.
How well do you understand the school aid formula?
Well, I probably know it better than the John Q. Public, but the school aid, the school aid formula is very complex, and so there's certain parts that I know better than others. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of different nuances to the different sections of the formula.
No, I didn't.
I could talk to you about transportation. I could talk to you about 7A and 7D. I could talk to you about certain things.
Sure. Okay. How about the relationship between a local levy, right, versus the funding that you get from Charleston? Is there an inverse relationship? The more you get from a levy, the less you get from Charleston? Because I have heard that from people.
There is an equalization that occurs based upon property values and personal property values, those sort of things. So there are certain counties out there that actually don't get any state aid because their levy rates are such that they don't collect them, and so there is a relationship there. But we're not in that situation here in Berkeley.
All right.
We're not like a Tyler County, or Doddridge County. They don't receive hardly any state aid, if any, because of their local personal property.
All right, Bill?
Yeah, it's going back to the data centers, and I've called it up. The schools get money from the property tax via the county government. Something like 82%, I think, of the property tax goes to the schools, and then the balance stays with the county to run run the county. This new data center, not a penny will come to the county. 55% will go to the personal income tax reduction fund. 15% will go to the electric grid stabilization fund, 10% for the general revenue fund, 10% for the economic development and closing promotion fund, 5% again to economic enhancement fund, 5% for the low income energy assistance program, but not a penny to the county. And hence not a penny via this to the schools.
Well, and honestly, this was a bill that really just came on my radar over the last 24, 36 hours because it was introduced very late in the game, and so I would have to do a little bit more research before I would want to, comment definitively. But what you're saying does make sense, and if all of those things were to hold true, then we would obviously be concerned that the local school system would be impacted by that type of legislation.
And not only was Eddie Gochenhauer talking in front of the committee, several other county commissioners were in front of the committee yesterday voicing the same concerns.
That's right.
So what's the rationale, what's the impetus behind this then, Bill? Because I'm sort of late to the party as well.
It's the governor's bill.
Okay.
And the governor was the one that introduced it. He's the one that's been pushing these data centers. And if you look at where the revenue's going, they're all state beneficiaries, and I think since it's his bill, since he's pushing it, why not to take care of the state first? And there's nothing wrong in taking care of the state, but it should not be at the total expense of the county.
And Bill says that as a former county commission president with first-hand knowledge of how the revenues work.
Because if you look at it from a county commissioner perspective, they've tried over the years to get a better control of their funding, and it's difficult to do. They've tried home rule, been working on it for several years, no success. They're trying the 1% safety tax this year with some, hopefully it'll come through, but there's no assurance yet. But Berkeley County has been very innovative in trying to reduce their costs. One, the home confinement center, the day reporting center, has saved the county a lot of money.
Sure has.
What they've done with the fire and ambulance has not saved the county money. It's provided the county services that no other county in the state can offer. So the county commission has done a lot, and I think they'll continue doing a lot. But they have the hands tied, and this is just another example, as Eddie Gochenhauer said yesterday, this is an overreach. This is an overreach from the state and making the county's job even more difficult than what it is.
Yeah, and full disclosure, one of our, Jeff Misty Haddix commented that the newest data center is going to be an adjunct to the hospice campus. So it's a huge project right behind on the Berkeley County side of the line.
But also Jefferson County side as well, Maria.
It's that big?
It's on both sides. On the back side, it's Berkeley County. On the front side, it's going to be Jefferson County.
Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Ryan Saxe, our guest here, Superintendent of Schools in Berkeley County, and the school discipline bill. And Senator Amy Grady, the Senate Education Chair, worked on this, and I understand it's close to being signed by the governor. It's on his desk. Is that the latest you hear?
That's what I hear. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do you know specifically what changes this will give you and opportunities to further discipline in the schools?
Yeah. So it gives teachers more autonomy in being able to address, I would say, significant discipline behavior issues in the classroom. It also gives flexibility for school districts to create alternative learning programs that are either outside of the classroom or outside of the school itself. I think it unties some of the strings that we have that require us to go through certain processes in order to either remove a student or to move a student to an alternative learning location where we can provide greater wraparound services so that we can help support the improvement of behaviors so that we can transition them back into the regular classroom. And so I think that those are big wins with it. One of the challenges that you have is that because you can create alternative learning programs, those programs require a significant a difference in resources and more resources. And when I talk about resources, I'm talking about things in the classroom, but also the training of specific staff and more staff. Those things, unfortunately, are not covered in the bill, and so those will be things that, as school district, we will want to flesh out. But there again, Berkeley is sort of ahead of the curve here. We have the CARES Academy, which I know that you've had Dr. Long on and has spoken about the CARES Academy. I think it is excellent foresight.
He'll be on again tomorrow. By the way.
Great! That's excellent. And that program has gone very, very well. One of the challenges there is that the CARES Academy was not for any students who were identified with special needs or special services did not qualify. We are taking a step for moving forward, even before this bill, to create an alternative learning program for students that have an identified disability, and sometimes that disability is actually a behavior disability. So we're making an investment in that already, but this bill sort of codifies those logistics.
So there's an unfunded mandate part of this bill,
I think
as funding goes. Yeah.
Well, what I would say is that there is a mandate that you do certain things that remove the student, that there is not additional funding to accomplish. And so, yes.
And how much of an impediment will that be? Will that be sufficient impediment that some schools will not be able to take advantage of this bill?
No, I don't think Berkeley County has a problem.
I'm not talking about Berkeley County. I'm talking about other schools.
Yeah, but smaller school districts, quite possibly. But I also think that, a lot of the legislation that's been created has also created these minimum caps for small school districts. So they're getting more money per pupil because they only have 1,800 students or what have you. And so that's, I think, something that the legislature has tried to protect in the interest of those smaller counties. My mindset is that there may be these unfunded mandates, but we now know about them, and so we have to be able to prioritize our budgets around them. It's always very helpful when there's additional funding tied to specific legislation that requires us to do X, Y, Z. But I also understand that there's not an unlimited amount of funds. But there are strategic steps that we may need to take that this bill will give us flexibility to do so. We just have to be able to prioritize our local dollars in order to accomplish it.
Except for the school discipline bill, has there been any bill that is going to impact the schools directly that you're familiar with?
Well, I think a lot of the bills absolutely have a direct impact on the schools. I know that there's I have some notes here. I want to make sure I hit the right piece of legislation. So we have House Bill 2164, and there's a Senate bill also, which is basically a school guardian or school safety officer bill that I think is really important, that gives us flexibility to hire retired military, retired police. We have safety officers that we've been hiring, but there are limitations as to who can qualify for those. So I'm very hopeful that those continue to have traction and can get past the finish line. There's one bill in particular that I am concerned about, and that's House Bill 2635, and that is an ECAP bill. That bill requires that for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, that you have a dedicated ECAP for every single one of those classrooms.
What's ECAP?
Classroom aid.
Okay.
So it's a classroom aid. Early childhood classroom assistance teacher is what ECAT stands for. And currently what we do is we staff our aides in those classrooms based upon class size. So if you have 10 or less students in a class, the legislation does not require that you have to put an aide in that classroom. And so, we can balance our enrollment based upon that. However, if this bill passes, it requires an aide in every classroom regardless of class size. And that would add another 23 positions to us in Berkeley County, which is about $1 million.
And do you get any state funding for the teacher's aid?
We do get state funding for teacher's aid, but it's based upon the number of students we have in those grade levels, not the number of classrooms. And so because you have class size restrictions, you can have more classrooms than you have the allocation of how they're allocating these aides, for classroom size. So that's why we would have to have 23 additional ones. However, there's another bill that I think is a very good bill, and that is Senate Bill 650, which is an interventionist bill. And what that says is that where every classroom has every kindergarten, first, second, and third has an aide, in lieu of hiring an aide, we could hire an interventionist, which is a teacher has a teaching certificate, one for every 2 classrooms that can go in and do push-in instruction or targeted instruction for struggling students academically. And I think that there's a real appetite that may work, because many of our schools, especially Title I, are used to having interventionists. Berkeley County funded interventionists with our COVID relief funding, and those had to be pulled back once the funding left. And so our schools have seen great success with interventionists. And I think if Senate Bill 650 was to pass, I think that there are many schools that would like to take advantage of that, especially moving into 3rd grade, because we're going to have to hire something like 65 additional aides to meet the 3rd Grade Success Act requirement, where we add aides to 3rd grade next year.
Now, what's the difference between an interventionist and an aide?
So an aide is a service person. So they are someone who may not have had a formalized college education in education. So there is a support person in the classroom. Now that they've taken the role of like a teaching assistant. We provide training around how to help reinforce what the teacher is teaching around reading and math and those sort of things, but they are not a certified teacher in reading or math. An intervention would be a certified teacher in reading or math. And a lot of times we find that some of our seasoned educators are attracted to those positions because they can provide very targeted instruction and support teachers in both in classrooms.
So very quickly, is the whole to move away from legislation, is the whole transfer issue resolved now? Are teachers and aides who are put on transfer lists, what's the status of that? Because I've sort of heard in the community, concerns.
Yeah.
My school is growing. Why did I get this letter that says I might be going somewhere else? Like 2 minutes, explain the whole transfer.
By I might be going somewhere else, you mean the teacher or the students?
Teacher.
Yeah, so we're in the middle of personnel season, and to say that we've completed that, no. We have issued notification to any impacted employee.
Okay.
But there's 2 different phases here. There's the restructuring of leadership at the district office, and that restructuring, I'm actually eliminating 9 positions within the central office. That's going to be a cost savings of about $1 million to our budget. There are some itinerant non-school-based positions that are not considered leadership that are also being shifted. So and that'll be a total savings of $1.5 million to our budget for next year. We are actually adding staff at the school level, even though there are some restructuring things going on at the school level. So like one of the big ones that we've heard, I know that's out there, is gifted education. Gifted education there is absolutely going to continue, and the services that our students and families have come to expect are still going to have high quality gifted programming. However, we have been taking a critical look at how it's been staffed and resourced, so that we can be thorough and efficient. And so we're working through that, and there's some tweaks to it, and we should have that finalized in the next week or 2 to communicate to not only our gifted teachers, but our schools and our families. There's also some restructuring of how we have our professional support folks. So we have technology integration specialists that focus on nothing but professional development around technology, and so those are being restructured a little bit. And so what I would say is that because we're growing, we're actually putting more staff in schools this coming school year. One of the initiatives we have is to ensure that every single school has a full-time counselor. Right now, we don't have that. We have some schools that have part-time counselors, so that's another push that we have. But we're having to increase class teachers and counselors and so on and so forth.
So those folks from the board office, were those actually RIFT positions, and do they get first priority to go back into the classroom? How does that work?
They're not RIF, they're eliminated positions. And so
Okay.
the someone who gets a RIF letter is because they're the lowest person on the totem pole, and there's
Right.
not a position they can fall into, so they get a RIF. So all of the people at the district office would have received a transfer letter if they had seniority and rights in the county. There are some people at the district office that did not have rights or seniority, and they did get a RIF letter, meaning that there is not a position for them next year in the county.
What type of positions are being eliminated at the board office?
Well, we've restructured, so we've gone from 5 assistant superintendents to 2 deputies. We have also what positions are eliminated? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So we've also eliminated several assistant director positions across the board, and there's been some coordinators and those sort of things. But there's definitely been a reduction of assistant superintendents. There's been some coordinators, assistant directors. So and then when I say there's a loss of 9, some of those positions, when I reduced them, we're restructuring them and creating new positions that are blending responsibilities. But the net loss is a total of 9 actual units of staffing positions.
And did you head up that restructuring?
Yes, that was me. I did work very closely in getting feedback from different folks from the district office, our schools, that helped me make the decisions in order to how to restructure, so that, again, it really comes back to how can we efficiently serve and support the work of our schools, and be very, I would say, financially conscientious of taxpayer dollars. The analogy I used in the past is that we were like a group of instrumentalists and musicians. We had the trumpeters, we had the bass players, we had the violinists, we had the flutists, and each one was creating their own music. But there wasn't really anything that unified the music in order to create a beautiful masterpiece of a concert. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, because everybody was sort of siloed doing their own thing under this structure of a 2-tiered district office of operations instruction. We're able to really do something.
Will there be
very good.
further examinations on consolidation?
Not over the next year. I think that if the board approves all of these recommendations, which will happen here in the next 30 days, I don't foresee any other changes, at least up through the next year. I will say that the other big piece on the horizon right now is we're having a comprehensive transportation efficiency study, where we're looking at our routing, we're looking at how we staff our transportation system. We're going to be asking for community input, family perceptions, school issues, and this company, this is what they do. They do public school transportation efficiency work, and they're going to make recommendations for how we can be more efficient. We can make sure that we have less routes that are canceled, and that will put more money back into the coffers of Berkeley County Schools, because currently we spend about $5 million more per year in transportation costs over what we get from state aid. And that is something that we really want to be able to try to alleviate, because we out of all the counties in West Virginia have probably the largest third-party contracts for transportation.
Good to visit with you, Dr. Saxe. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks so much.